This is All India Radio. We now bring you a special program, Experts Speak with AIR News on the Union Budget.
Good evening and welcome. Joining us now is Mr. J.B. Mohapatra, CBDT Chairman. Mr. Mohapatra, we welcome you.
Thank you. And
with him is also in our studio we have Vivek Johri, CBIC Chairman. We extend a warm welcome to you as well. Gentlemen, both of you, my first question is, first of all, we needed a big focused domestic growth-oriented budget, and that has been given to us by the Finance Minister. Also the fact that there has been hardly any disruption, and this lends a lot of confidence to the entrepreneurs in India going forward and communicates to them that we are in a stable policy regime. What do you say, Mr. Mohapatra?
You brought in entrepreneurs. We have a particular section, 80 IAC, where if you read through the finance bill, you find the Honorable Finance Minister expanding the 80 IAC to 1 more year. Incorporation will be now delayed by 1 more year, and still then he will get that 80 IAC. Those are for the startup entrepreneurs, right? So for everything, for all classes, there is something or the other. There may not be rate cut per se, but there is a reduction in surcharge, and there is expansion of deductions also for all sectors, for cooperatives, for companies. There is something or the other for all sectors of the economy.
मोहपात्रा जी, अगर हम ये बात करें, आज वित्त मंत्री ने जो एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण घोषणा की है बजट में, वित्त वर्ष 2022-23 में डिजिटल करेंसी शुरू करने की बात की गई है, यानी कि डिजिटल रुपया अब डिजिटल करेंसी कहलाएगी। तो इसके अलावा क्रिप्टो करेंसी खरीद बिक्री पर भी 1% का टीडीएस देना होगा। तो ये जो डिजिटल करेंसी की बात हो रही है मोहपात्रा जी, ब्लॉकचेन टेक्नोलॉजी पर आधारित जो डिजिटल करेंसी होगी, इससे इकोनॉमी को कितना बड़ा बूस्ट मिलता आप देख रहे हैं?
जो डिजिटल वर्चुअल असेट्स जो हम उसको टैक्स करने वाले हैं फ्रॉम 1/4/2022, इसका डेप्थ नापना इस टाइम में ऑफिशियली it is almost impossible because there are some anecdotal evidences. Sometimes it is said it is 30,000 crores annual turnover in those exchanges. Sometimes it is said that it is 100,000 crores. One really doesn't know. But as an income tax department, हम 4-5 साल से काम कर रहे हैं इस पे. तो इसमें 4-5 वेराइटीज का इश्यूज आ रहा है. एक तो है कि इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न फाइल नहीं करते हैं बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स, और जब वो रिटर्न फाइल करते हैं तो वहाँ पे क्रिप्टो ट्रेडिंग में उसका प्रॉफिट या लॉस कुछ नहीं दिखाते हैं. अब वो अगर वो दिखाते हैं तो उसमें मिसमैच है, उनका सेल्स परचेजेस से बहुत ज्यादा है, तो सेल्स एंड परचेज में मिसमैच हो जाता है. एंड चौथा, अगर वो सरप्लस दिखाते हैं, कौन सा हेड में टैक्स होगा? ये इनकम फ्रॉम बिजनेस है, इनकम फ्रॉम कैपिटल गेन्स है, या इनकम फ्रॉम अदर सोर्सेज है? ये तीनों टाइप में दिखाते हैं. सो टैक्स पेयर्स में भी कंफ्यूजन है, टैक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में भी कंफ्यूजन है कि किस हेड में उसको टैक्स करे. तो ये जो टैक्स अभी आ रहा है 115 BBH रेट विद सेक्शन 194S जो टीडीएस प्रोविजन है, तो इसमें हम लोग को पता चलेगा कि इस मार्केट में कितना डेप्थ है, कौन सा इन्वेस्टर्स यहाँ पे आ रहे हैं, वो मुनाफा कमा रहे हैं या नहीं कमा रहे हैं, और जो इन्वेस्टमेंट सोर्स है वो प्योर है, नॉट टेंटेड. मनी लॉन्ड्रिंग एक्टिविटीज, एंटी सोशल एक्टिविटीज, इसमें उनका रोल, इम्प्लीकेशंस, इसको भी हमको देखना पड़ेगा. सो मेरा कहना यही है कि हम लोग 4-5 साल से, 7 साल से, 8 साल से हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि टैक्स इन्फॉर्मेशन और टैक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को ट्रांसपेरेंट बनाए. सो टैक्स एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को जब हम ट्रांसपेरेंट बनाते हैं, हम कोई ओपेसिटी या कोई नॉन ट्रांसपेरेंट सेक्टर्स को अगर वो आ जाएगा तो हमको बहुत प्रॉब्लम होगा. दैट्स द रीजन एज टू व्हाई वी वांट टू ब्रिंग दैट सेक्टर, द इमर्जिंग सेक्टर, supposedly the fastest growing sector, into also the tax net. So this is the right time to have taken the call, and I think we are not late in announcing it in the budget.
So, Mr. Mohapatra, does it lend legitimacy to crypto?
No, it doesn't, because income tax does not determine, or it does not pronounce.
Recognize.
No, it does not pronounce on the legality or illegality of any transaction.
क्रिप्टो से जुड़ा एक और सवाल कि 30% का जो टैक्स का बात की है कमाई पर, जो क्रिप्टो से जो अर्निंग्स हो रही है उसमें जो लोग कमाई कर रहे हैं निवेशक, उसमें 30% टैक्स की बात की गई है. तो ये 30% टैक्स जो है ये नए निवेश पर लागू होगा क्रिप्टो में, या फिर जो पहले निवेश कर चुके हैं और उससे कमाई कर चुके हैं उन पर भी लागू होगा?
देखिए, ये रूल है कि निवेश करने के टाइम में इनकम टैक्स वहां पे नहीं जाता है. Normally, only when you exit a transaction by selling or transferring, then only the tax incidence comes. अगर आपके पास क्लोजिंग स्टॉक में कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट पड़ा हुआ है क्रिप्टो का, अब भी 1/4/2022 के बाद अगर आप सेल करेंगे तो न्यू रेजिम में टैक्स होगा
जी।
अगर वो अभी सेल करते हैं तो भी टैक्स होगा क्रिप्टो में टैक्स देना जरूरी है वेदर अंडर द ओल्ड रेजिम और whatever regime he was following earlier it has to be taxed whether as a business income or as income from other sources or income from capital gains or whatever but now he has to pay tax but if he makes a profit after 1/4/22 if the bill becomes an act then he gets that amount taxed under 115 BBH at 30% of the surplus.
Okay. Mr. Jory, this question is directed at you. According to you, is this a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a neutral for the budget?
I think it's an absolute thumbs up. I have no question in my mind. And I'm speaking on the basis particularly of proposals that are there in indirect taxes. As you're aware, the budget doesn't really deal with GST per se, so it's focused mainly on customs. The main theme of this year's budget, as far as customs proposals are concerned, is that it has made a very deep dive into cleaning the tariff structure. And FM had announced it in the last budget that she will undertake a comprehensive review of exemptions. I think all experts will agree, if you look at all the tax reforms committees, starting from Raja Chillaya committee to all the others which have done work on tax reform, particularly in customs tariff, they have all uniformly and consistently recommended that there should be low and moderate taxes with very few exemptions. This year, we've been successful in eliminating as many as 500 exemptions from the customs tariff. And the beauty of it is that we've been able to do this with very broad-based consultations with the industry, with stakeholders, with the line ministries concerned. They have recognized that there are some exemptions that have outlived their utility and need to go. There were a large number of exemptions which were listed. They had long lists of products that were exempted, for example, in the machinery sector. All those lists have been reviewed for oil exploration, for machinery, for pharmaceutical, and we've been able to prune down many of those lists. The other part of simplification which has been addressed in a very big way is that the tariff structure in India was very often called very opaque because the rates were prescribed first in the schedule and then from the schedule you had to move to exemption notifications to even figure out the rate that was applicable to an item. This year what we have also managed to do is that a very large number of exemptions we have built into the tariff itself. So that is a practice that most international and most customs administrations in the world follow. And I think that is also a very major step in the direction of simplification. So I see it as an absolute thumbs up as far as, cleaning up the customs tariff is concerned.
Okay. Now, this question is directed to both of you. There has been phenomenal buoyancy in tax revenues this year. Despite that, and wasn't the finance minister a little cautious? And only a 10% increase in tax revenue has been budgeted for next year?
For indirect taxes, I would say that if you were to look at individual components of buoyancy, you see the indirect tax revenue is made up of three components. So you have customs, you have GST, and you have excise. Now, excise, which is 3.65 lakh roughly, you can count out of the buoyancy equation because, these are specific rates which are not really dependent on GDP, etc. So the other two taxes, if you were to analyze individually, they've exhibited a buoyancy in estimates for this budget compared to revised estimates of last year. We've assumed a buoyancy of almost 1.1 to 1.3, which I think is quite healthy. And we're therefore anticipating an increase of about 12% in customs and about 15% in GST.
Now, we have also been seeing stability in taxation, and the finance minister also said that in her speech today. The government has made a commitment towards a stable tax regime, towards easing of paying taxes, and no news on that front reiterates the fact that all is well. So, do you agree that this will improve the investment climate in the country?
Absolutely. That is a must. Stability in the rates, stability in all the in the administration also. That is a must for investment to come in. Unless one is sure about and confident about the stability of a system, then only investment will come in. Nobody likes periodic disturbances in the administration or in the rates. So the certainty of the tax rates and the certainty of the tax deductions or the exemption provisions, all these will have a big stake and a big say in an investor's choice to putting the money in a particular tax jurisdiction. So that has been the goal of the government, to make it turn around from a exemption-driven, deduction-driven tax administration to a simplified, stable, certain tax regime for the years to come. We are here for the long haul, and we want to be conservative in our approach, because the big businesses or small businesses or medium businesses would always like the economy to stabilize, tax administration to remain stable, and not to litigate unnecessarily, and to have a clear direction at which the tax administration is moving.
आपने स्टेबल टैक्स रिजीम की बात की। बजट से आम आदमी को जो सबसे ज्यादा उम्मीद रहती है कि कर टैक्स स्लैब्स में कुछ बदलाव होगा, कुछ राहत मिलेगी। इस बार कोई राहत हमें इनकम टैक्स के मामले में कोई नहीं दिखाई पड़ी। बात होती है कि कैसे कंज्यूमर की स्पेंडिंग किस तरीके से बढ़े अर्थव्यवस्था को बढ़ावा देने के लिए। तो हम कंज्यूमर को या करदाता को हाथ में कुछ दे नहीं रहे हैं, तो ये स्पेंडिंग कैसे बढ़ेगी, ये हम जानना चाहेंगे।
ये कहना टोटली करेक्ट नहीं है कि कुछ नहीं मिला है। सरचार्ज में हम लोग चेंजेस किए हैं, 2 डिडक्शन प्रोविजंस में, एनपीएस में, और डिडक्शंस इन रेस्पेक्ट ऑफ समबडी हु इज सपोर्टिंग एन इन डिपेंडेंट हु इज सफरिंग, डिसेबल्ड डिपेंडेंट, उनके लिए हम लोग किए हैं। कोविड का रिलीफ जो प्रॉमिस किए थे सब हम लोग डाले हैं। कोविड में एक्स ग्रेसिया पेमेंट इन केस ऑफ डेथ, दैट इज टैक्स एग्जेम्प्ट नाउ, we have put a exclusion in 56(2), and also COVID में आपको जो relief मिला था from your employer, from anybody else, that also will not be a perquisite in your hands. So many things have been done, small significant things, but major idea हमारा ये था कि हम लोग बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे प्रोसीजर सिंप्लीफिकेशन किए हैं। फेसलेस को हम लोग एफिशिएंटली चलाने के लिए आगे उसका दरवाजा खुले हैं। टैक्स पेयर का राइट्स को, टैक्स पेयर को कैसे मिले, जो डिमांड करेगा हियरिंग के लिए, जो पहले प्रोसेस जो कम्बरसम था उसको हम लोग ईज आउट किए हैं। हर पैमाने पे ये बजट स्टेबल टैक्स रिजीम का उसी डायरेक्शन में ये लेके जा रहा है। उसके लिए जो प्रोसेस सिंप्लीफिकेशन का जो था, दैट हैज बीन द मेन थीम ऑफ दिस थिंग। इफ यू हैव मिस्ड आउट फाइलिंग योर रिटर्न, यू कैन कम बैक विद इन 2 years and you file your return. It shows a great empathy from the government or the taxpayer that he may have a legitimate reason as to why he did not file the return.
Mr. Johri, I would like to ask you this. The fiscal deficit target has been set at 6.4% for FY23. Higher tax collections so far in the current fiscal have ensured that the government meets that target comfortably. You agree?
I think so. And I think Chairman CBDT also touched upon this point. So this is a year where, we want to, use revenues collected through taxes for, additional expenditure requirements. And a pandemic, for instance, has imposed some new sort of obligations on the government. And in order to meet them, we need to have high tax revenues. The beauty of tax collections, I think both in CBDT and us, if I may speak also on behalf of CBDT, is that without tweaking the rates, without increasing the tax burden on taxpayers by rate increases, we've been able to garner much more revenue through better administration, through use of technology and other means. So I think that is what is significant about revenue collections in recent years.
Okay, what do you have to say now, moving away a bit? Or let me ask you this about the GST. Are there more products that are going to come into it? Will there be a fall in reduction in the GST tax? Is there something on the anvil going forward?
Yes, so on GST, there is a group of ministers which is currently working on the subject. There has been a view expressed by many experts on GST that you need to rationalize the rate structure. There are 2 ways in which you rationalize the rate structure. One is by removal of inversions. So you had instances where the finished product attracts a lower duty or a lower tax, and the inputs attract a higher tax. We've already corrected quite a large number of those inversions with the approval of the GST Council. For instance, in textiles and footwear and many other products, renewables. So that is one way of rationalizing the tax structure and also providing relief to the end consumer. This is a point which is often missed, and I want to emphasize it. When we correct inversions, what happens is that because of the availability of credit to the manufacturer or the supplier, he's expected to, and he does, pass on the benefit of the correction and inversion to the consumer. And so you may not see a direct rate change, benefiting the consumer, but it works through the price effect. So because the credit can be more easily utilized and the flow of credit in the system becomes, unhindered, the consumer benefits and the supplier is expected to pass on that benefit to the consumer. So that's one good way of rationalizing the rates. The other, of course, is reducing the number of rates, rate dispersion, and removal of exemptions. Now, that is something that the group of ministers chaired by Honorable Chief Minister of Karnataka is working on currently. The urgency is that, as you're aware, in June of this year, the assured compensation of 14% will come to an end. And the states are obviously very concerned that if the assured compensation does not come to them, then what are the means through which they can raise revenues? So, we expect to have the recommendations of the group of ministers soon. And of course, the GST Council will discuss those and take it forward.
विवेक जौहरी जी, स्टार्टअप्स को लेकर के सरकार का बहुत जोर है, स्टार्टअप्स को कैसे बढ़ाया जाए और ज्यादा से ज्यादा स्टार्टअप्स आए, और स्टार्टअप्स को जो है टैक्स में छूट का फायदा जो है इस बार जो उसको 31 मार्च 2023 तक विस्तारित किया गया है, शायद एक्सटेंडेड. ये कितना फायदेमंद साबित होने वाला है स्टार्टअप्स के नजरिए से?
स्टार्टअप में 3 out of 10 years उसमें आपको 100% टैक्स हॉलिडे मिलता है. स्टार्टअप का इनकॉर्पोरेशन 31/3/2022 तक होना था, तभी वो उसको मिलेगा, डिडक्शंस मिलेगा अंडर 80 IAC. Now it has been extended by 1 more year because of pandemic. So startup movement के लिए, to build up the momentum, so this is the Honorable Finance Minister's gift to the startup community, that you have 1 more year to be in the game for getting the tax holiday.
Okay.
Right.
For the benefit of our listeners, this essentially means that the startups will be able to avail a 100% tax rebate on the profit made in 3 years in a total time frame of 10 years of operations, given their overall annual turnover not more than
100 crores.
Okay, in a fiscal. I would like you to throw some light on the central bank digital currency, if you could, which is going to come up in the form of digital rupee using blockchain. This will be issued by RBI in 2022-23 as investment in cryptos turn hot in the country. So how and what will happen going forward?
The finance bill, if you look at 115 BBH, that enables the government to tax the trading in the virtual digital assets at 30%. It also empowers the government to say which virtual assets will be kept out of the taxation. So once the RBI's virtual asset comes into play, then we must wait the government's directions at which these things will be playing out. At this point in time, I cannot say with confidence the policy trajectory, the digital currency which RBI is going to come out with.
From a common man's perspective, how do you think that mostly digital based everything, so there's no face-to-face interaction happening, what else is happening to ease this interaction between you and the common man?
The basic aim and the basic motto of the department, hence moving forward, and it has been going on in the last 3 to 4 years, is to cut out the physical interface between the taxpayer and the tax administrator. And towards that end, many of the things which we have been doing, even for verification of the data, now it is faceless. And that is playing out. It is giving us good revenues. Even this is because the improvement in the quality of the data processing, what we have done. So the kind of data which we are having and sharing and co-sharing with different agencies, including the CBIC, so that is bearing fruit. If somebody exports and we have the data from the CBIC, we are utilizing that, leveraging that data to look at and compare income tax return of anybody. So these are giving us lot of data points and lot of leverage in order to capitalize on the data and to make the most of it. So we are at a space and at a position in which we can best utilize, maximize the revenue earning potential of both the legislations to the fullest.
And you did touch upon the citizens uploading income tax returns or ITRs within 2 years in case of any omission or mistake. Would you elaborate a bit more on that? How can a common man, it's primarily for citizens, so how will they benefit? What is it that they need to do going forward to avail this?
The new section is Section 139(8)(a). There is nothing like that. So this has come into being from 1/4/2022. It will come into being. 139(8)(a) would say that if a return has been filed under 139(1) or 139(4) or 139(5), all these things mean normal return in time, or it's a revised return under 139(5), or it's a belated return under 139(1), 4, 5. If you filed a return, or if you have not filed a return, in both the cases, you have one more chance of coming under 139(8)(a) within 12 months or within 24 months. and filing a return. That is for assessment year 22-23, where the door for you filing a return, original, revised, belated, it stops by 31/12/2022. So from 31/3/2023 to 31/3/2024, he can file the return by paying 25% additional tax and interest.
Okay.
And if he comes in the second, that is from the 12th month onwards till 24 months, he can file the return, pay the additional taxes at 50%. So for both the years. So this is available to people who have not filed the return and people who have filed the return but have omitted to disclose fully the total return. But this is not available if you are trying to game the system, in the sense you are coming for filing a loss return. We will not allow that. No claim of refund. If a notice has been issued to you, taking your case to scrutiny, or your case has been completed under scrutiny, you cannot come back, and you can file an updated return only for 1 year. In the sense, for 1 year you can file one return. You cannot update the updated return. Only one time you can get that. You cannot file the updated returns if your case has been searched or surveyed for that year and 2 back years. So there are certain restrictions also, so that we don't have that temptation of gaming the system. Some restrictions over there, but broadly it says that if a general assessee has missed out filing the return or disclosing fully and truly all the facts, and before the department issues him a notice, if he comes and files the returns, we are happy with that.
Mr. Mahapatra and Mr. Johri, thank you so much for being with us.
कार्यक्रम में जोड़ रहे हैं फिक्की के महानिदेशक अरुण चावला जी। अरुण जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत है। अरुण जी, सबसे पहले जानना चाहेंगे आपसे कि वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण ने जो बजट पेश किया, उसको आप किस तरीके से आंकते हैं?
I would say that the finance minister has once again laid out a pragmatic, prudent and growth-oriented budget that puts forward the blueprint for long-term development of our country. She has not only done a fine balancing act of ensuring consistency in policy and tax rates, but simultaneously laid down a comprehensive package for recovery, relief and reforms. And when I say recovery and relief and reforms, I mean relief to the stressed segments, steps and measures for recovery and continued push to the reform process, which was the need of the hour. I must say that the budget scores high on all these counts. FICCI did a survey in which MSME, retail, tourism, hospitality were the worst affected sectors and needed handholding. Survey also revealed that emergency credit line guarantee scheme had been successful in helping MSMEs navigate through the crisis and needed extension. This is exactly what has been done, as the scheme has been extended for a further period of 1 year with an additional allocation of 50,000 crores for the hospitality sector. Another very positive thing is that credit guarantee scheme for subordinate debt will be revamped with additional infusion of funds. A review of CGT MSC scheme could improve cash flow-based lending by banks and enable more MSMEs to get access to formal credit without collateral. On the recovery part, let me say over 35% increase in the capital expenditure will have a multiplier effect on the economy and help in higher pace of growth. Also, the investments in 100 cargo terminals for multimodal logistics and other initiatives under the Gati Shakti will help bring down the logistics cost, that is cost of doing business, and will boost manufacturing. So there is additional allocation of 19,500 crores for PLI scheme for the manufacturing of solar PV modules to increase the solar power capacity. So the budget has extended the timelines for benefits under the concessional corporate tax regime for newly incorporated manufacturing companies till March 2024. And on the reform side, well, government has introduced path-breaking reforms over the last few years, including during the COVID period, but the budget continues its focus on reducing litigations and simplifying procedures. For instance, if a question of law in the case of an assessee is identical to the one which is pending in appeal before the jurisdictional High Court or Supreme Court, the filing of further appeal in the case of that assessee by the department will be deferred till that question is decided by the High Court or the Supreme Court. This will greatly help in reducing the repeated litigation between taxpayers and the department. And finally, on the reforms, budget also lays down a comprehensive roadmap towards the enhanced ease of doing business. The contours of ease of doing business 2 reflect the spirit of cooperative federalism, effective governance, and a strong consultative mechanism with business and citizens.
Mr. Chawla, you very rightly said that the finance minister has pledged to spend more to fire up the key engines of growth in Asia's largest economy. And she has increased the size of the economy's annual spending to $529 billion to support growth plans for the year beginning April. And that, Mr. Chawla, is quite an encouraging figure to begin with.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you. And not only that, the finance minister has given a push to the digitization of the economy, which will lay the foundations for a new India. Rollout of 5G mobile services, focus on developing the digital economy backbone through greater telecom penetration, expanding broadband coverage to rural and remote areas, introduction of the digital rupee, setting up of 75 digital banking units, rolling out of national digital health ecosystem, setting up of digital university for world-class quality education, issuing e-passports with embedded chips, encouraging the states to set up digital management of land records are steps in making India modern and digital economy. So I think the Honorable Finance Minister has actually done a wonderful job.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chawla. That was DG Ficky giving his views on the union budget. Joining us now is Sushma Ramachandran, our senior business journalist. Sushma, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
So, Sushma, how do you see the budget? Is it a long-term budget? Is it a growth-oriented budget?
I think what's important in the budget is that it seems to be there's a single-minded approach. It has placed its bets squarely on pushing public investment in infrastructure to promote growth. It's a very low-key budget in the sense that there are no fancy schemes, there's nothing, no frills. The most important highlight of the budget is the 35% increase in capital expenditure, which is quite unprecedented, and it is expected to kickstart a virtuous cycle of investment in an economy which has been, badly affected by the pandemic, despite the recovery process. The other key issue in the budget is the focus on digitizing the economy. And I think that, of course, is brought out in 2 or 3 aspects. First of all, the announcement of a digital currency that the RBI is going to launch very shortly, and the decision to recognize cryptocurrencies. I mean, there's an implicit recognition of cryptocurrencies by announcing that, virtual digital assets will be taxed.
But the chairman was just now with us. Mr. Mahapatra said that there is no legitimacy just because we are taking 30% does not mean we are making them legit.
That, of course, is something in the fine print, I would say. That is something probably more technical. But somebody who is trading in cryptocurrency will now have to pay tax. So to that extent, you are recognizing the cryptocurrency. He says not giving legitimacy to it. But I think the Revenue Secretary was on television and I heard him say, well, as far as we are concerned, if somebody is making money on a transaction, then we want to ensure that we get the taxation out of it. Probably what the CBDT chairman said is correct also. They're not legitimizing it, but they're merely taking a very revenue-oriented approach to the whole issue.
सुषमा जी, सरकार ने विनिवेश लक्ष्य में कटौती की है और वित्त वर्ष 2022-23 में 65,000 करोड़ रुपए का विनिवेश लक्ष्य रखा है और चालू वित्त वर्ष का भी जो 1,75,000 करोड़ का जो विनिवेश लक्ष्य था उसे घटाकर 78,000 करोड़ रुपए कर दिया है। तो विनिवेश के लक्ष्यों को हासिल करने में क्या दिक्कतें पेश आ रही हैं?
मेरे ख्याल ये प्रोसेस काफी धीरे धीरे चल रहा है। अगर आप देखें एयर इंडिया का वो 7-8 साल से ये इश्यू चल रहा है प्राइवेटाइजेशन का, तो ये चीजें काफी प्रोसीजरल इश्यूज बहुत ज्यादा हैं और इस वजह से क्योंकि उनकी टारगेट 3-4 साल से अभी वो अचीव नहीं हुई है, तो इस साल उन्होंने बड़े कंजर्वेटिव अप्रोच लिया है। उन्होंने कहा कि चलो हम अपना टारगेट बहुत ही कम रखते हैं, 65,000 करोड़ का रखेंगे और मेरे ख्याल में वो ये जो टारगेट है इसको ये इजीली ब्रीच कर देंगे। अगर बीबीसी या भारत पेट्रोलियम कॉर्पोरेशन लिमिटेड का प्राइवेटाइजेशन होता है तो वही एक प्राइवेटाइजेशन ट्रांजैक्शन से ये इसके क्रॉस कर लेंगे।
Sushma, thank you so much for joining us.
You were listening to a special program, Experts Speak with AIR News on the Union Budget. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.